Whoop, whoop.
All right, everybody, it is time for another new episode of A Whole New World with me, your host, Jacob New. Again, I'd like to thank Jace Neocore for letting us use part of his music on this podcast. Thank you so much. If y'all haven't want to hear any more, he is on Spotify, Jace Neocore, Neoquor, I believe. Definitely check him out. So, we're here to put a spotlight on positive things happening in the community and developing that positive mindset. So we have Zhen Barrientos here. But before we get to her, it is time for our favorite time of the week, guys. It is the dad joke of the week. All right. So what lies at the bottom of the ocean and twitches? A nervous wreck. I get it, because shipwrecks. Oh, geez. I'm going to not quit my day job. So, like I said, we have Zhen Barrientos here with us today. Very lucky. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So, she is a counselor and just got her the certificate saying that you can start your nonprofit. So congratulations.
Yay.
Congratulations.
It was such a big week last week.
And here, there you go.
Woo!
Yeah.
Together. We did it together.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. The audience loves it too. So, tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the Dallas area. I'm, of course, Latina. I'm bilingual. And so I just opened up my counseling practice. I named it after myself because it was so fitting.
Okay.
So it's called Zhen Counseling, PLLC.
Oh, I like it.
Really, it just came about wanting, the whole idea of even opening up a counseling practice came from wanting to help people that looked like me. Not physically, but emotionally and spiritually. And, you know, I could recognize their struggles. I was like, that struggle looks like my struggle, and we should probably do something about that. And then you said, yes, I got my certificate formation for my nonprofit. So my nonprofit is, it goes hand in hand with the counseling practice. And it just was kind of born out of the need to, I learned the truth about access to mental health and like mental wellness the hard way.
Is it easy? Is it hard? I'm assuming it's not very easy.
It's, you would assume that, people are like, oh, if you need counseling or you need access to mental health, just go, and you should be able to get insurance to cover it. So insurance does dictate a lot of it, and it just kind of paints what your whole experience will be.
And insurance is always fun.
And they're always looking out for your best interest.
Exactly.
It's so nice. It's not. Sorry, insurance, not sorry. But it was just like this need, like just learning this ugly truth about access to it. And then also how insurance wants to put people into this box, right? And it's like, if you don't fit into this box, then this is what your care looks like no matter what. And so then I was like, okay, what are we going to do? I said I was going to help all these people, and what's going to happen? So Elevate to 528 was born, which is the nonprofit. Okay. And I named it that because, so 528 is one of the 9 solfeggio frequencies. So it's named after the 528 hertz, which is the frequency of love.
Oh.
It's the miracle tone.
Okay.
It's the miracle tone. So it's the tone that's said to like transform lives and even upgrade your DNA, and it does all these miraculous things, right? Okay. They even said Imagine by John Lennon was set in this tone, right? So if you would Google something, it'll be like the tone that killed or the frequency that killed John Lennon. It was That was 528. So
he was killed by love.
Sorry, he was killed by love. But yeah, I named it Elevate to 528 because I want, our greatest vision is to see everybody elevated to that frequency of love, right? No matter where we are, we can all get to that frequency. And just dealing with the whole accessibility. And so I think on my paperwork I put something like, I went really deep, and then my mentor was like, don't go too deep because you're kind of out there. So I know that's your, that can be your vision and your mission and whatnot, but on the paperwork it was like, okay, fine, I'll just kind of bring it down a tad to say that we're using counseling and wellness practices to help people on their pursuit towards their highest, evolution and, version of self. Yeah, that's what we want. So
that is amazing, and
thank you.
Very, very educational in the process. I had no idea about the 528 hertz. That's so cool.
But yeah,
so you're up to a lot of different things, and you just started your own counseling practice, and so I guess let's start with that. So what got you into counseling in the first place? I'm curious.
So I came from. Out of high school, the last thing that I wanted to do was go to school, so I didn't. I remember getting the paperwork to take like the ACT or something, and I was like, I need $40 to take the ACT, and my parents were like, that's the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard. Be like, why would you pay money to take a test that you don't want to take if you're not going to go to college? And the college wasn't even on the table, to be honest. It was just never part of the plan. The plan was, and has always been, since I was a child, we got to get out and we got to get the money. You don't need college. I just had this understanding that you didn't need college to go get money, which is true in some ways. But so, I just, I went through a series of jobs. And I wound up working for a corporate, actually. I wound up working for a corporate. I wound up doing like a ton of consulting on the side. I've been working on my own.
Like counseling for corporate?
No, not counseling for corporate. Just, I worked in the dental field for a while doing like compliance things. So anytime like the state would come down into the offices and like give people, these marks, or they send in auditors, I would be the ones to meet them.
Okay.
If Medicaid came
lucky
in.
You.
Yeah, it was the night. Anytime there was a complaint, it would be like me meeting them. And so I would basically like write out something, and then the lawyers would be like, that's cool, yeah, you could do that. So I wanted that's actually how I put myself through school once I decided that I think I should go to school.
Cool.
So yeah, that kind of led me... Eventually, I did decide that I wanted to go to school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, though. And you asked me how I went into counseling, and it wasn't exactly my life that got me there. It was, everybody takes like Psych 101.
Yeah.
And usually it's so much fun, and at the end of it, you're like, I think I could want to, go into psychology. And they don't tell you like this huge, long road. It's like, you could be a lawyer twice before you could be a counselor. But, my professor was giving out these gift cards to whoever made the highest grades, so I would just annoy everybody, and I would make 100 every single time.
Oh, nice.
But
you were that person.
I was like, I have no shame, I love this, whatever. But I wound up missing a test, and I had to go make it up in her office. And when I was sitting there taking this test, this little small child came up. She was about, I want to say like 5 or 6 years old, and then I saw her come back out by the end of the test, and she gave her a hug. She gave my professor a hug, and that was it. And she was like, I'm so proud of you. And everybody was kind of like sitting around crying. And I was like, okay, she didn't really do anything, miraculous. And I mean, I didn't understand. Yeah. So
I'm trying to take a test here. Can you keep it down?
So I gave it to her. It was really the only thing I wanted to know is like, why is everybody so excited about this kid that, I mean, like, cool kid, you gave someone a hug. That's nice. But why is it such a big deal? And she was like, well, I'll tell you why it's a big deal. Because she said they had found this child when they went in, when CPS went in to go rescue this child. The child was probably like a year and a half old, was standing up, like kind of clinging to its crib and whatnot, but its diaper hadn't been changed like in 2 weeks or so or longer. Like it had started eating, things that should not be eating. And it was to the point where, it was just in terrible, terrible shape. And the child didn't even cry anymore. It had no emotions, didn't recognize anybody, like wouldn't speak, just wouldn't even respond to pain or anything. Like it just was a shell. So once they rescued that child, it was completely, because once I saw that, I was like, oh my God. this my professor at the time had been working with this child since the moment that I got rescued until like now. The child's 5 or 6. So now the child is able to show love and appreciation and just be comfortable showing that. Wow. And so I was like, wow, do you realize that you just changed this child's life? Like, you changed someone's life. She's like, yeah, that's why we do it. And I realized, I remember sitting back down and just being completely overwhelmed and thinking, that's the kind of difference I would like to make, because it would have made all the difference in my life, and I was like, wow, I was so overwhelmed. And I still didn't know I wanted to go into counseling after that. It was just kind of like, I want to work on the brain. I'm like, I'm very impatient, so my first love was neuroscience. And I was like, I just want to work on the brain. And then I discovered, once I worked around deceased bodies, dead bodies, I was like, I think I want to work with people that are alive versus people that are not alive.
I want someone that can talk back to me.
It's like, I'm not getting much of a response here.
Yeah.
But, the road was really long. The road was really long to become a counselor. But I'm so
thankful. How long did that take?
I used to be a little... society tells us that we have to be on this timeline, but no one's on it. But we tell everybody we're supposed to be on it. Yeah. You should be on this timeline. So for me to be able to sit here and say, I have a counseling practice, I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I have a nonprofit too. It took me 19 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm dating myself a little bit.
That's dedication.
I graduated a long time ago, but it took me 19 years.
So you started when you were 11. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm only in my 20s, guys. That's an ongoing joke.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, it took me 19 years, and it was, it's definitely
and what's
a struggle.
Yeah. Well, that speaks a lot about your dedication to your goal, though. I can't imagine many people. I don't even know if I would have stuck in for 19 years. So I give you props.
I can't sit here and say that I knew it would take 19 years and I still did it. I think the universe has a way of kind of like shielding you and then letting you see. And because if I would have known, just the process alone to become a licensed professional counselor in Texas, I have friends who make fun. I always say this joke. I'm like, I could have been a lawyer by now, because I have friends who went to school after me, and they're lawyers now. Yeah. They were lawyers before I got my license, just because of the process. But it was such a blessing in disguise. And looking back, I am able to say, you know what, we can stick to it. We just, one step at a time. I know that I really had to learn how to marry grace and grit. Okay. Because it was just a constant ebb and flow of grace and grit through those 19 years. And we're just at the beginning of that.
Yeah, I love that.
We just barely got to the start line. This is the start line.
You were doing the warm-up. That
was the 19-year warm-up. And now, like, the true stuff, the true work, what we came here to do starts now.
Yeah. So. And that's awesome. And, I like counseling, and I feel like it's very beneficial. But I think counseling itself kind of has that taboo kind of that goes along with it. I don't want to go see a counselor.
Of course not.
I know my fiance and I, we've been going to kind of like a premarital counseling, and it's helped us a lot, and I've seen the benefit. And there are things that I found out about myself that I was, that makes.
I think it's wonderful. Yeah. I think everybody should go through that.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely, I've asked some people who go through, usually they go through premarital counseling through like their church or whatnot. And I think it's absolutely great, because these are questions that people aren't asking. Sometimes people come in for couples therapy, and I'm like, well, did you not, like, when did you guys talk about this issue that's you're having trouble with? And they're like, well, we didn't.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
that's the point.
It's like, well, why? And it's like, I don't know, I didn't think about it. And I'm like, I hear this phrase, I didn't think about it, and I'm like, gosh, everything around us is designed to make us like not think about it, because we're so busy with like where we have to be, or this life we're supposed to live, or this relationship we're supposed to have, and we don't ever stop and kind of like check ourselves. Because you're a completely different person than you were like 10 years ago.
Yes.
Whether you realize it or not, right?
No, it's fact.
Yeah. And I am too. And I'm like, that's great. I love the old me. I love it. Like, it's who I am. I used to, like, we were talking about how, our narratives and how they shape who we are. I got to this point where I'm like, I am not that person. I do not want to talk about that person. And then I was like, why is this person still around?
Yeah.
Because it's me.
And they're still there. Yeah.
It's still me. It's going to be there forever. And then finally I was able to, again, marry it with grace and grit and be like, that is me. It's okay because it's not me anymore. And I have to remind myself of, like, who I am is who I am with me, right, and who I want to be. And then who I am, the way that you perceive me, is completely different.
Yeah. And
I can't help that. Like, and it's not, like, your perception or the world's perception of me is not me. And I always tell people, I'm like, what is your actual perception of you? Like, forget what the world says you do. And usually this question comes up when I ask them, it's something simple. And I always jump on the opportunity to, like, not harass people, but like kind of like be like, oh yeah, question? What about this? They'll be like, oh no, I don't travel because that's just not what I do, or that's just who I am. I've always been temperamental, or I've always I can't quit smoking. I've always been a smoker. And I was like, how old were you when you you became this person and then you never went back to revisit? Like, you decided to be this person when you were 10 or 12 or 13.
And then it's not.
And then it's like, you're still carrying that person around, but it's not even who you are.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think that. And I it kind of reminds me of, I've read something where people were talking about, that's just who I am. That they were saying with that statement is like, well, I have no interest in developing myself or growing myself. And so I'm just going to ignore my flaws and just act like everything's okay. And I feel like that's kind of along that same line when you don't acknowledge your and correct me if I'm like
no,
off
you're
on the
fine.
weeds. No. But I mean I kind of feel like
I thrive in the weeds. So
I like to cut them down. I don't do well with bugs. But anyways, but like when we don't acknowledge that, then that and acknowledge that it's everything, it never gets fixed, and it's always going to be a problem for us as we go on.
Yeah. Well, you don't have an opportunity to fix it or to even change it, or how are you going to change something you don't even acknowledge?
Yeah.
Whenever my son comes home and he's having not the greatest day, or I hear someone is not having the greatest day or the greatest week or the greatest situation, and I know it's not completely terrible, I'm always like, isn't that great? Yeah. Isn't it awesome to be having such a terrible time? And my son is used to me speaking this way, so he'll just kind of roll his eyes and be like, yes, because we thrive in contrast. And I'm like, yeah, the fastest way to find out what you like or what you are is to figure out what you don't like or what you're definitely not. Yeah. I'm like, it's all in the contrast. I'm like, we can't expand without the contrast. Tony Robbins said something that was really profound, and I really love what he said. He was saying how we're unhappy, we're not happy even when we're successful. Like, why are all these successful people unhappy? And I'm like, that's a really wonderful question. Like, why are they unhappy? And as a therapist, I ask myself, because I go back and review these people's lives and everything that they have everything that we're like, oh, if I had this money, I would be so happy and successful. If I had this guy or this girl, I'd be so happy and successful. And it's like, okay, so they have all these check boxes, but they're completely unhappy, and it's why. It's because we're not evolving who we truly are. We came here to progress. Progress is happiness. Yes. Evolution of ourselves, creations. We came here to create and love and expand. And if we just become stagnant, then we're unhappy no matter what you do. I told my son, I'm like, if I let you sit on that couch forever, the entire summer, or just until you get tired of it, there's going to come a point in time where you're going to be tired of it. You're going to get up, probably walk around the house, and not know what to do with yourself. You're going to come back, jump on the PlayStation, and then still feel bored. I was like, why? Because you're searching for something else. I'm like, we weren't meant to just be here. And sometimes the universe will make you uncomfortable just so you can move. Yes. Just so you can expand. So I'm always like, thank you so much for pushing my limits.
I like that. I like to think of it instead of just the universe. I think to go, it's more God just pushing us out of our comfort zone.
Yes,
So, already a lot of good stuff that we talked about, but we need to take a quick break. So we'll be right back. This is A Whole New World with Jacob and Zhen Barrientos.
magic.
Going back live. All right, welcome back everybody to A Whole New World with me, your host, Jacob New, and Zhen Barrientos here today. So, before the break, we started to talk about personal narratives and how that can impact us. I think you were doing a fantastic job of explaining how people can be so successful but very unhappy. And I think a lot of it has to do with that we just haven't come to terms. We haven't dealt with our past and our own personal narratives. You know, I was reading the other day. Yeah, read, everybody. The Power of Positive Thinking, which is one of the bases for this podcast. But it was talking about how in there they're giving a story about this executive of a company that wanted to promote this guy, that one of his employees, but he couldn't because he would just disclose all this confidential information. And so it talks about how he got to know the guy, and that all his life growing up he was in this he always felt inferior. And so his way of he never had a lot of money, he never was part of a fraternity, and everybody that he was around had all those things. And so because of that he felt inferior, and the only way that he could feel more equal is by disclosing important information. And so once he understood that, he was able to correct it, and then he was eventually promoted in the book. So sorry about the spoiler there, guys, but yeah. So but I think it's important to think about that each of us has this personal narrative, and in order for us to have that positive mind and find that happiness, we have to first kind of identify what is our personal narrative.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think it's so, and this has been a journey for me as well, because I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people, to heal people, to love on people. My goal is to become sunshine. Yeah. So we're still working on that. But definitely one of the things, as I was sitting down and meditating on how this is unfolding, and now it's unfolding so quickly, was something that hit me was, okay, if you want to be more authentic, you're going to have to really own your narrative. And I thought I was owning my narrative. Honestly, I thought I was doing an excellent job at owning my narrative, but I wasn't. I wasn't being as I was I'm owning the narrative that I want to own. I'm not owning the narrative that I don't like.
I love that discretion there, because I think a lot of times too, I know for me, there's times I'm I don't want to own up to that really right now, you know?
It's why do I have to do that? That's not even who I am anymore. But it's you're literally moving the junk from one junk closet into your next apartment, into next to your apartment. Yeah. Instead of just cleaning it out and just being oh, this is cool. Yeah. This is me at my worst. And this is me, work in progress. But no, I was okay, I realized that if I wanted to be more authentic. So I'll give you an example. So when they would ask, now, I've had, I just served as vice chairman for the Southeast Dallas Hispanic Chamber. So I would go out and do these events and whatnot. And just through different organizations, I was asked to be an MC or whatnot. So they'll make you do a bio. And they'll be or they'll put you in these situations where you have to say who you are. So it was always I'm a Latina bilingual counselor in DFW, blah, 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 blah. So you give this professional bio of your highlights. Mm-hmm. And I really sat down, I was but who am I? if I'm sitting down with you, who am I? Why? Because I'm sure people want to see the real you, not just the you that's well, how did this happen? Well, it took me, people want to hear, it took me 19 years to get here. Yes. We're completely imperfect. It took me 19 years to get here. And I realized, I was okay, I'm a single parent. I never say I'm a single parent. I talk about my son, and I raised him completely by myself from the time, he was born to, now. He's 16. Shock. I look so young. I know, guys, I know. Yeah. I have a great skincare routine. But, no, and so I would never say that because I saw that as a weakness. And I'd never acknowledged that I would see that as a weakness until I have a friend. I have a friend who is kind of working with single parents or single mothers, really. And I was they don't need help. They just need empowerment. And I was okay, I really need to, there needs to be some kind of like reconcile between her beliefs and like, why is this rubbing me the wrong way? And anytime anything rubs you the wrong way, this is a great time to pay attention instead of walking away. Because I was really good at just like, nope.
Get out your notebooks, everybody. Get ready.
It's like, not going to work on this. So I was like, okay, if something is rubbing you the wrong way and you're like, I don't know why she's saying that. It's like, this is great because you're onto something. Like, you're onto something that you're not even aware that you're onto. So I'll be like, why does it bother me so much to say that? And I'm like, because I see it as a weakness. And I'm like, I worked so hard to make it not a weakness that saying that, I was like, it just kind of drops me down. And so now I'm like, no, this is great. Like, I'm so excited. And it wasn't, I think we were talking about this earlier. My friends and I have the best group of friends, but we're all like very like, I do some of my counseling groups is with the older population and whatnot, so we'll have end-of-life discussions. Yeah. So it'll just come up, be like, hey, have you ever thought about this? Or just, in conversation. And they're like, no, I didn't think about that. And like, what would happen to your kids if you're gone? And so my son, really, I'm all he has. And he's old enough. I know my family would step in and kind of help him. But I would say, I'm like, JJ, sorry, JJ, I gave your name. I'm like, no one's going to feel sorry for you. Like, if I pass away, they're not going to be like, oh, sorry, JJ, like, your mom is all you had, and you were raised by a single parent. I'm like, no one's going to say that about you, because they're going to be like, hey, you know what? I'm pretty sure she tried to empower you. Like, that was her only goal her whole life, was to make sure that you were empowered. And so I really, like, had to learn to accept that narrative. And that's just, like, one of the many things that I need to marry, like, with grace and grit, like, just to reconcile. So, yeah, definitely your narrative shapes your perception about who you are. And once I shaped that to, like, no, I'm totally empowered, cool. It became such a positive to say, like, yeah, I did this on my own, or I accomplished this on my own. And it makes other things make sense, right? Because you're like, why did it take you 19 years? How long were
I think that's great.
Well, how long were you in college? A long time. Yeah, no, another reason I was so, not ashamed, but I was a little embarrassed going through college. I was so terrified of taking out student loans that I was like, I'm not going to take a class I can't afford. If I can't pay for it right now or by the end of the semester, then I'm not taking the class. Yeah. So as a result, I was able to graduate from my undergrad and my master's with no debt. And no student loans. No scholarships, because no one's interested in, like, an adult learner. They want you kids when you're in high school. I keep saying this.
Well, I think that you probably could have found something, but there's several things that stand out about this, that you recognized it, but, like, how did you deal with it? How did you, like, kind of turn, like, what did you do?
Oh, man. Like, it is not pretty looking in the mirror, guys. Like, I didn't say it was, like, nice, or I didn't never said it was gracious. Like, it was a beautiful thing to do, but no, it was, it's not going to happen. Like, you're going to hit a wall several times, and you're really going to have to look inside and just kind of accept that no matter what, even, like, no matter where you came from, it does not have to dictate where you're going. And just being able to recognize that I'm not my past, like, it's part of me, but, like, my future is completely unwritten. And I have to remember that. And just being, like, my story is the most powerful thing that I have. My narrative is the most powerful thing that I have to connect to the people that I want to connect, or to help the people that I want to help. There's been some really serious, tragic, like, things that have happened in my life, and I spent such a huge portion of it, like, trying to run away from it, trying to not, just kind of not embrace it, but just not be that person. Because I was like, I want to overcome this. And my idea of this was like, if I overcome it, then I never have to look at it again. Well, now it's like full circle, because it's like, you need to own up to that, and that's okay, because you're telling other people that it's okay. So let's start with you. Let's start with yourself. You're, you gotta walk that talk, and my son's always like, walk the walk, talk the talk, and I'm like, whatever, dude. I'm not gonna go cut the grass. So, like, this is a whole nother conversation, but no, it's quite difficult, and really it just starts with just acknowledging, because we all know that we're unhappy, and you're like, why am I so unhappy when we're feeling this way? It's like, why am I so unhappy? What do I need to do? Like, and you already know. Like, there's already, like, this thing. Something. Like, you'll have this immediate thought. You're like, okay, but I can't do that. Like, I can't move away. Like, I can't, like, I'm so unhappy in my marriage, but I can't just get a divorce. Like, I can't just do, and I'm like, okay, well, then what's the next thought that comes to mind? Or, like, why do you feel this way? Like, why are you experiencing this friction? It's gonna keep happening, guys. Like, it's gonna keep coming around and around until we deal with it.
It is, that's very, very true, I think. For me personally, just to kind of share, I know, for me, my older brother has Down syndrome. I don't know if I shared that on here, but yeah. So growing up, even though he was older than me, I kind of viewed myself as the example kid.
Yeah.
And so that kind of I put a lot of pressure on myself to be perfect and set that perfect example. But what also happened though too is, elementary school, we don't always understand, and so some kids would laugh and when my brother would do things and made me uncomfortable, and so then I started to really become self-conscious of what other people thought, and I didn't know that was something that had happened, and I didn't really want to talk about it or admit it because honestly I was ashamed.
Yeah, of course.
But now completely different. I'm not ashamed of him at all. Love him. Actually, one of my posts recently had him in it. But and so I didn't realize, but it was such a powerful thought eventually that led me to want to attempt suicide. And so that was my kind of like wake up call. Oh, I got to deal with this. So it was a lot of me waking up, and for me it was waking up. I'm confident. I don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
And it took years of me just saying that to myself, speaking to myself, looking myself in the mirror, and until I finally believed it. And so I think that's important, that we have to deal with those things, because if not, then it starts to kind of snowball.
Of course.
And then,
definitely.
Really have an effect on us. So, but
something. I mean, wow, that's so powerful. Everything that you just said. And it brings me back to like something so simple that even like I worked on forever was just believing that we're capable and that we're worthy. Mm-hmm. It's just sometimes it's like, why, I have this great job and I just can't get this promotion. Why? It's like you don't believe you're worthy, or you're not worthy of love or acceptance. And it came from like just these things that seem so minor. Right? Yeah. It's like, I can't believe this thought came, like this thought of feeling inferior when I came from this incident when I was a kid. I should be over it. But it's like, no, because those feelings become internalized. Yeah. Like we internalize and you don't ever release it. And you don't understand it. As kids, we can't process that. Yes. And then as adults, we can, and it's like really super complicated when it comes out that you don't want to process it.
And sometimes you have to do a lot of digging to get to it. It's
and it's like, I can't believe I did that. Like there's a lot of guilt associated with it, and really, I think we like tiptoe around the whole idea of like when we finally come to the conclusion that we have to forgive ourselves. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I forgive myself for being imperfect. I forgive myself for not being like the best that I could be. But you are the best that you can. That you are the best that you can in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. Until we can do better. Yes. Like, and so that's amazing. And I love that you said it took you so long. Because for me, it
was years.
It took me years to just accept even that, that I'm like, oh my God, I'm this really imperfect person. And now I'm like, it's so nice to get to the edge and look over, and then you're like, you know what? Nothing really matters once you come back to the side, because you're like, I can embrace everything. What's the worst that can happen? It took me so long to like, even like starting this counseling practice, I think everything is in divine timing, but I'm like logistically and according to society's timeline, I should have started this practice a long time ago. But I think it's in divine timing because now I can look back. I wasn't the person even that I was a year ago, mm-hmm. right? So I could have just immediately tried to like go into this counseling practice without doing my foundation work, which my foundation work is myself. Yeah. Like being prepared and knowing that like I feel confident in myself. And I still feel like I'm flying off the edge like every single day. Like that's what it feels like. I think
we all have that. Yeah. I felt like that several times today.
But I always try to remember like it reminds me of skydiving. So I'm terrified of heights. Do not like heights. So I will deliberately expose myself like to heights. I will put myself in a situation like
you like put your face right in your fear.
Skydiving, and I'm like, they said that if you confront the lion will walk away. And I'm like, that's not true, because I'm still terrified. Yeah. Always going up in there, and we're like, all right. They open the door, and I'm like, oh, so we're really going to do this. Yeah. This is so nice. Oh. And so, like, it's every time I do it, it's equally as terrifying as the first time. Yeah. I think the first time was less terrifying because you didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, you're really going to do this again. What's wrong with you, Zhen? What's wrong with you? And I'm like, everything. But the first 3 seconds that you fly out of this plane, have you been skydiving?
No, I have. I'm not afraid of heights. I'm afraid of falling from heights.
Falling, yeah. Yes.
So I have not jumped out of a plane.
It's absolutely terrifying. Like, the first 3 seconds were just like the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced in my life. And then after that, I was like, oh, I'm alive. There's bliss. And you're floating down. But I attribute, like, this fear, like, of doing things to skydiving. I'm like, of course, the first, like, initially it's going to feel like you're falling because you totally are. Yeah. And you're totally falling. Yeah. But then afterwards it's like, okay, that wasn't so bad. And I think I waited so long. What I was saying is, like, everything's in divine timing. Is I waited so long to, like, become, like, the person that would take the reins for this and actually confront it. And I had to ask myself, now that I have this, I'm like, because even now I wanted to put it off. I wanted to put off the counseling practice and whatnot. It was really like the world, or just my responsibility, the responsibility that I feel, that I was like, I need to contribute to this place that I call home, and the world. That was like, you gotta jump, Zhen. You gotta jump. And it made me jump. Like, all you guys were the ones that were like, we believe in you. All you gotta do is jump. And I'm like, yeah, this is so terrifying. Yeah, it's so terrifying. Up in the sky. But no, definitely. God, I was saying something about timing and I forgot. I lost it twice. Maybe I'm not supposed to share. Okay.
Well, maybe it's not the right time to share it.
It's not the time to share about time.
So, but there is one thing I do want to hit on, because, and I think we have just enough time to talk about it. You've said this 3 times, is that you married grit with grace. What exactly have you meant by that? Like, how?
So I realized that, and this is all part of, like, just the journey, right, of just allowing me to be me and being okay with being okay. Like, I think a lot of people have this notion that in order to be okay, we have to be completely perfect, or we have, like, again, I go back to, like, society and whatnot, and what we're all, and I'm like, but none of us are doing this. I mean, some people are, but according to Facebook, but come on, guys, like, come on. We all know that that's not real. That's a filter. Yeah. It's a filtered life. And so I really, so I had to learn, because I was like, I'm all about grit, and I'm resilient, and I can get through this, and I was like, okay, that's cool. You got through it, and you're past it. That's in the past. But how did you do it? Like, are you 100% okay with that past? And I was like, no. Because if it came up, you'd be like, oh, cringe. Yeah. I don't want to deal with it. Like, I just want to move forward. And then, I gave this example earlier. Like, one of the tragedies that happened in my life was we lost my dad very tragically. So he was murdered. And there's 5 siblings, myself included, and we all dealt with it in a very different way. And it was just like basically like oil and water, just repelling in our own ways. Like, we kind of retreated to the inner world. Like, how are we what is life going to look like now that we've lost this person that was our glue? And then it's like, okay, now you're dealing with losing this person that was like everything to you, that was essentially our glue. But then also it's like, okay, it's such a huge tragedy. Like, the way that he passed away was just so violent and tragic. And it's like, do we talk about that? Do we not talk about that? Like, what do you even say? Like, if someone says, I'm sorry, like, okay, thanks. It's like year 1, like year 2, year 3, and it's like, oh man, I'm not over it. Can I still talk about it? And that's the thing with, like, grief, or, like, just kind of, like, being okay with, like, not being okay. Because, so now, like, every year, my dad's birthday is actually this Friday, so I'm able to talk about it now. But so instead of being like, okay, I'm going to go retreat and and just have a drinking session by myself and think about myself, and this is what and that was fine. Yeah. It's probably not the best way to cope, but it was fine because
it is a cope.
And I was like, okay, Zhen, you got through it. Good job. Like, let's evolve. Like, where would he want you to be now? Like, what would he actually want you to do? So, like, this weekend, I'm going, like, tubing with my girlfriends.
Oh, that's what's
and they all know, like, they know it's like, it's still a tough weekend, but, we're going to have the best time, and it's awesome, right? So we're kind of embracing. So we'll take it as a moment to, like, kind of celebrate our victories. Like, and that really reminds me, like, it's a reminder every year to celebrate, like, how far I've come, like, our accomplishments, or just being alive.
Yeah.
Just being alive.
Finding the joy.
Yeah, it's so hard sometimes because I have to make myself present. I went so long without being present. Sorry. I went so long without being present. I have to, like, make myself mindful. And that's and so I do practice mindfulness.
Real quick, what do you mean by being present?
Just, like, being able to, like, capture this moment, right? Mm-hmm. To be able to know that it's this moment that makes up everything else in life, right? So all we have is right now. And so knowing that, like, so sometimes I would be looking back through my memories, and I'd be like, oh, I wish I would have remembered that more. Like, why, we would be sharing memories, and my sister would have a very different memory from me, and I would be like, how do you remember things so vividly? And it's because she was present. She's like, we ate this, it tasted like this, it smelled like this. So she had all these different sensations. She was present in the moment. So she remembers it, as to me, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that party. Yeah. I remember I had to clean up afterwards. What did you do? It was like just such a completely experience. And so now I really try to be like, I remember this. Like, I focus on, like, anchoring myself into, like, whatever I'm experiencing, whatever I'm feeling. And I try to, like, slap myself on my mind if I start to float away. Which is not a bad thing, guys. Floating away in your mind is really good. But not just, when you're supposed to be present.
Yeah. When you're by yourself, not around,
Deliberate creation is awesome.
Yeah. The whole idea about being present, I think, I can't really elaborate more on it, but I think that's a key proponent for getting over things and just being okay, like you said, with it's okay to feel bad.
Yeah.
Or to feel how you feel at those times. It's okay to feel angry. I would tell my students, it's okay for you to not like something. It's okay for you. It's just, how do you respond and how do you go about expressing that might not be okay? Or how do you deal with it? That, like, and I'm not knocking, because I've done this too. It's just like going and drinking. I mean, probably not the best choice to deal with something. If you're trying to put it off, okay, yeah. But I think most of us out there can relate to that. But
sure. Emotions are meant to be felt, guys.
Yes, they are.
That's why they have the word motion, right? Oh. But we don't linger in them. Like, it's okay to be angry, and it's okay, the goal, I'm always telling, I feel like I was very temperamental as a child, so I heard. So I was like, as an adult, I had to learn to respond versus react. Because I'm just like, it's already, like, I already got a response for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, like, snippy. Well, when it's, like, people I love and you're safe and you're comfortable, you're in that safe space, nothing bad's going to happen. So I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said it like that. It's probably a little insensitive. So I really had to learn to, like, respond versus react. And then you were talking, about the whole emotions. Yeah, if you're going to hold it off, you can. There's multiple ways to, like, push those feelings away. But emotions are felt.
They're still going to be there.
Emotions, feel the emotion, and then let it go. Let it go in motion.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
Yeah, and then we were talking about, like, the effect of being present. It makes you more happy. Mm-hmm. Because if you live in, if you're living in the past, then you can be depressed or you're always feeling regretful. And I'm sure people have heard this, and if you live in the future, that's where your anxiety comes from. Because you're constantly thinking, like, what if? And the majority of it, if you actually think about it, I'm like, 90% of the stuff that you're worried about isn't even going to come true.
Yeah. I think of Doctor Strange, and he has that time thing, and he can go and see the different possibilities. Like, you see,
he's one of my favorites.
Infinity War. Yeah,
I have not.
Oh,
I'm probably the only person. I know. I want to go watch it. It's already over. But
yeah, it's okay. And I can see them both together, and it'll be a complete 4 hours, 5 hours, or whatever. But yeah.
I'm just going to have a complete marathon.
I know we could, there's so much to talk about with this topic, but unfortunately, we have to start wrapping it up. But so you have your counseling practice.
Yes.
Now, if somebody would like to reach out to you and just
if you
talk
want to
with you,
reach out,
how would they get a hold of you?
They can email me. So you can email me at Zhen, Zhen, at zencounseling.com. So ZHENcounseling.com.
Okay. Again, that's ZHEN at ZHENcounseling.com.
Yeah, and what's so cool about the nonprofit is that one of the biggest reasons, and I know we're wrapping up, but one of the biggest reasons that I decided to kind of go about it the way it was is because I wanted to evolve the definition of counseling. I wanted us to get out of this notion that it's strictly couch therapy and it has to be that way. And I wanted it to be, I mean, we're all smart individuals, especially counselors. Like, we know that what the insurance dictates, Jacob to be needing is not what you actually need. So it's like, no, sometimes he needs a little CEO talk with, just some, like, fundamental stuff. And traditionally, there's no allowance for that. So the stuff that we talked about, I'm like, the whole vision is to have, like, these type of workshops and maybe boot camps and seminars available to whoever wants them, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be able to get it in the tidbits or as much as you want, essentially. So evolving the definition of counseling, making sure that our legislators are there for us, the people who represent us in Austin are there for us.
Oh yeah.
So,
and that we should all be doing that on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, guys, is it 7 already? Oh, guys, go vote.
5:25. Still got an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you for being a guest on our show, and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I know the listeners out there did. For all you listening out there, please don't forget to share this episode with all your friends. So that is how we get the word out. So we appreciate all the shares that you guys can give. So with that, this is Jacob New, your host, with another fantastic episode of A Whole New World. We'll see you guys next Tuesday.